here at sunny, well, cloudy Sunshine Coast for this weekend's 70.3 World Championships, and today we are very privileged to have one of the favourites in Lionel Sanders. Lionel, thank you very much for taking some time.
Hey, no, thanks for having me on.
So you are one of the favourites going into this weekend's race, and you've come down from Canada. How has the travel been? How is the body feeling?
Wasn't too bad, actually. It's my first kind of long haul flight, so it wasn't too bad. My legs felt good. I'm taking this kind of as an opportunity to really learn about these long haul kind of trips, and so far so good. So I'll definitely, I know Ironman is doing some stuff in China and stuff, and I'm definitely going to think about going to some of those races now.
Because your previous, the last 2 years, you've centered around North America.
Yeah, well, I figured, what's the point in going anywhere else? I haven't mastered racing in North America, so there's no need to go anywhere else. And the biggest difference here was the time change. Like, I think it's what time is it here now? 4. So it's like, what time is it right now? Back home, 2:05. So like it's totally different time. So, but I started to sleep in more and more from day to day, and that wasn't too difficult. So when I got here, I was pretty much on time. So my ideas with regards to time changes, I guess, are somewhat valid, and hasn't been too bad.
And how are you approaching this weekend in terms of your race plan?
I can't really approach it. Unfortunately, my bag of tricks is the same every time. Like I try and swim as absolute hard as I can, minimize the losses in the water, and then the bike, I push the absolute highest power that I can push and be somewhat confident that I can still run after. And that this weekend will probably, I'm thinking, be 360, maybe 370 watts. Try and push that number up just a little bit higher than I have, like at, for instance, the North American Championship. And then on the run, it's just basically survival of the fittest. Everyone's going to be dying. I think this type of course is going to favor a strong biker. Obviously being a good swimmer is going to get you in a good pack, but strong bikers are going to prevail, and then whoever can run well off of very, very tired legs, I think, is who's going to win the race.
You did make a call out on social media asking for footage of the course, and given that it's almost a tale of two parts, the first half is relatively consistent and the second half is a little bit undulating. How are you approaching, you said 360, 370, how do you approach a course like this, where it's not like Hawaii, where it's fairly consistent,
steady power,
where you're going to have some serious spikes?
Yeah, I figure actually on the initial phase, the first 32 kilometers or so, just because it is going to be dead steady power, I'll probably push a bit more power, just because I do a lot of my training on the CompuTrainer indoors, so it's very similar to what I train to do. And so I will sort of stick to my guns. Plus, I think the bike packs are not going to have broken up then, so there's not too much point in fighting against them at that point. It's not until they start popping off the back and stuff that it's time to really start to, I think, hit it hard. So I'll ride, dead steady, high power, that portion, and then as we get and people start popping off the back into that hinterland loop, I might bring the power down a little bit. But that being said, there's a hill that's got to be like nearly 20% grade that, I think I got, my lowest gearing is 42 by 25, and I think I was pushing like 380 watts in the absolute minimum to get up it. So obviously the power is going to be spiking there, but I have a feeling that's going to be sort of where the top guys in that front pack are really going to make a move. So that's right around that point is when I'll be looking to hopefully start to catch some of the main contenders.
Do you think that there won't be big packs at all getting into T2? Do you think it'll be a sort of spray?
I would say, upon looking at if you looked at the topographic map, you'd been like, oh yeah, this is going to be like draft fest the whole time. And then you get here, it's like, that must be the wrong topographic map, because this does not feel like that. So I would say very unlikely. The only way that there's going to be packs still formed or still together then is if people just literally were sitting up, not riding hard. And I just don't think the guys who are here who are looking to win this, Josh Amberger, Sebastian Kienle, Andreas Dreitz, they're not going to ride like that. They're going to ride hard. Guys like Tim Reed, Sam Appleton are going to try and go with them, and it's just going to split everything up. I think, though, you'll have like guys like Craig Alexander who will stick to his guns because he knows he can run very well, and hopes that guys who do ride like that are going to pop off and he's going to catch them at the end. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how experience versus, going for it, going for broke, how the two plays out at the very end.
And it's certainly a run course that will find you out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of hills on it. I rather than be sort of at the turnaround on that end, not at the beginning and the end, but it's a moderately challenging run course. I mean, I think there's a bit of turn to it, so you're sort of out of sight, out of mind at times. What are you going to do? It's right on the ocean front, so it's unlikely that you're ever going to get a very, very hilly course right there. But I think it's a fair course all the way around.
Yeah, right. And I suppose, do you look at the power when you straight away out onto the bike? How long do you give yourself before you're hitting that 380 mark or 370 mark?
It's usually actually quite difficult in the beginning because you're just so full of adrenaline to push that low of power. Usually I get into the 400s right off the bat. And I mean, if there's any advantage I have from being a weaker swimmer, it's that I don't have all the pack dynamics around me. Usually I'm either by myself or with just maybe a couple other guys. So whereas if you're trying to make that pack or whatever, you basically at the mercy of everyone else. And so for me, I really have to hold myself back, say, no, steady. So usually I'm right into it, and I'm holding back a little bit in those initial stages. And I'd say after about 15 minutes or so, just because I've spent so many hours this year at 360, 370, naturally that's where my legs go.
Okay, so you think that because you're not in that pack mentality of surging and of working much harder than you need to stay in there, you're thinking that you get out of the water a little bit more intact than...
Well, I think it's actually been if you can find a silver lining in being a weaker swimmer, it is that I ride steady power, and the steady power that I push, I ride within myself. I ride it steady, and that has led to being able to run very well off the bike. And I think some of the guys in the pack potentially are riding outside of themselves at times, spiking the power, riding other guys' races, and that leads to, I think, poor running or not running to your potential.
Now, as an age group, and I suppose a lot of age groupers can sort of relate to you because a lot of age groupers do struggle in the water. But what are your expectations personally? I mean, when you have that plan of going, well, this is the power that I need to hold, and then I'll just run as fast as I can. Are you satisfied now? You are one of the favourites. Are you satisfied if you hit those markers and you come 10th? Then so be it. Are you satisfied, or are you actually having some sort of positional expectation?
No, man. I think piece of doing well in the sport is having the right attitude and the right approach. And for me, I can only do my absolute best on the day, and that is all. I mean, it kind of sounds kind of corny, but it truly is all you can ever do on a day. And so, I mean, I've had days where I've intended to push 360 watts. I just couldn't physically do it. I pushed 340 or even less in one of the races this year. And I mean, it is what it is. It's you do the absolute best you can do with the cards you're dealt on the day. So if I get a flat tire or something, oh well, I'm going to change it. I'm going to do it as quickly as I can, and I'm still going to fight right to the very finish for whatever I can do with the cards I was dealt. And I think that's the right attitude, and you never lose, really. You don't really have bad races or bad experiences anymore because you just do your best with what you're given. So
you don't go home sort of asking questions if I could have done more.
Yeah, no, like I mean, I've seen a lot of guys with bad attitudes and stuff, and quite frankly, a lot of them, I've not been in the sport very long, but a lot of them are already out of it with those sort of, when you have those, it's of course you can have those performance-oriented goals, but those certainly can't be your major main motivations. You won't last long with that.
Now, Global Sports Coach, we're very interested in the coaching side of things, and I guess you're 7th at the moment on the KPR standings going into Kona with your points for the year, and I think you're probably the highest ranked self-coached athlete as well. When you got into the sport, as you said, not very long ago, was there a thought to go speak to somebody or get some sort of advice at the very beginning?
Was there a thought? I mean, swimming was the thing. Swimming was the area where I sought out help because I didn't understand what was happening. Why? Like, I was pretty used to it because in high school I was a good runner. I excelled in many of the sports that I did, and then I get into the water and there was no excelling whatsoever, and I just didn't really understand why. So I certainly did seek out coaching in the water, and I had some underwater video analysis done, and then it just started to. I think as time went on, I just started to see that my type of personality is I feel that I was born to be a coach. That's what I would like to do after this. And so it just sort of was that snowball effect as I'm not really the most coachable person, you know, like I have my own theories. I like to test them. And quite frankly, I feel like you have your highest expectation, your highest standards for yourself. And so I hold myself to the absolute best, whereas I think if I was being coached, then I could have that as an excuse as to why I didn't do so well. So it worked very, very well for me. And so yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I definitely did seek out coaching, but then I just started to see that, no, I think I'm going to be the coach here. It's just almost logical.
So, looking at your year now, so you raced Kona last year, right?
Yes.
And then you went straight through to Arizona.
Yeah.
You won that. Now, late January, you're already on form again for Panama, where you won again. All the way up to the end of the year now, you'll still be on form like all year. How do you periodise your year so that you can get the most out of all of the races but not be too fatigued, get enough recovery between races, but, you know, there's no cherry picking anymore. Like, you've got to be on form to beat the pros that are out there now.
It was interesting, actually, on the cherry picking side of things, because I think my first real pro year was 2014. And it was before Ironman sort of consolidated all the races. So you still could cherry pick races then and sort of do like more B-level races. Whereas this year, there's not been a race that I've done that you didn't have a very recognizable big name there. So yeah, the days of cherry picking are completely over. So it does pose a difficult challenge. And actually coming over here to Australia is kind of interesting because you could come over and race over here. So you could race year round, really, race in North America and then over here in, I guess, our winter, your summer. And but from the periodization standpoint, quite frankly, you can't always be in great shape. So, and I think a lot of guys are running on the same, because the World Championship is always going to be in September 70.3, and Kona is always going to be in October. So we're all sort of working on the same schedule. So when I went to Panama, for instance, in January, I knew that everyone was working on the same schedule. Everyone had just finished up a late season Ironman, either Kona or whatever, Arizona or something. So it was a fairly level playing field, but you always have the risk going that someone made that their A race. And you just can't beat that. Like you just if someone decides to do that, then that's the way it is. It's very unlikely that you'll be able to beat them. For me, I went to Panama and I'd only had I think I had 5 weeks of training going in, and basically this entire season, from a periodization standpoint, I've just held myself back up until about a month and a half ago, where I started to say, okay, leash is off. Now you can start to do, I mean, I got over 100 miles 1 week of running, which is the most running I've done in a single week since 2013, when I was mainly doing running, pure running. And so it's just been that gradual progression. And I just know going into those early season races, I'm not going to be in the absolute best shape. It's just impossible. It's in fact, it's too risky. If you try, it's not going to happen. Like, you're just not going to. And I made this mistake actually in 2015. By the time I got to Kona, I was fried. Like, I was trying to, first of all, I was trying to be in great shape for every single race. And secondly, I was doing so much race pace sort of stuff because I was insecure about being able to do the full Ironman distance really well. And so I was literally doing almost an Ironman like a week in practice in a solid training session. In fact, in Kona, it's kind of a funny story. I saw Sebastian Kienle after he was going to the Oakley house, and he was coming in, I was leaving, and as I was leaving, he said, "Hey, Lionel, stop doing an Ironman every day," like giving me like some advice for my coaching side of things. So yeah, that's sort of how you approach it anyway.
So on that, I suppose it's good to think about how you've obviously learned from that. So what have you changed? You've done a lot more short stuff.
Yeah,
a bit more intense.
Yeah, I mean, I knew this. I did this in 2014. I did like a more polarized, approach to things, and I ran really well. I think I ran sub 110 off the bike 3 times. Like, I was running very well. Like, for instance, in one race, I ran a 110, and I actually like shut it down. Not shut it down, but I tried to ease off because I had another race the next weekend, and so, I had the results to prove that the more polarized thing works. But I think that's the thing about the Ironman. That's the 70.3. The thing about the Ironman is you always have this insecurity that, like, can I go the distance? Am I going to be able to do it? And all this stuff. And so I find it's just a natural tendency. You start saying, oh, I want to do a session where I almost cover the whole distance. And in the water, you do that. And in the run, I want to do a 40K run, a 45. And I got up to doing 45K run on the treadmill in 2:45, which is like, I went through the half or the full marathon in 2:35 or something, which after doing a 3-hour bike workout earlier in the day, it's just ridiculous, like, to think that your body can sustain that sort of thing. So that's what I was doing in 2015. I tested that hypothesis of, if I do a ton of race pace stuff, will it make race pace easier? And the question is no, because basically the entire, I think, foundation of good training is getting so here's race pace, and here's your training intensities, and just getting the separation between the two more and more and more and more and more. And you can decide what you want to do with as it gets higher, because race pace is going to feel easier. You can keep the bike pace, the wattage the same, and run better off of it. You can increase the bike wattage with it and run the same, all these sorts of things. These are all the I guess, decisions you get to make as you increase that separation. And so that's the lesson I learned. By the time I got to Kona last year, I was fried. It was actually my worst. I did 15 4+ hour rides in practice, and Kona was my worst ride. And I did many of them indoors in my little pain cave, my heat chamber at nearly 100 Fahrenheit, 80% humidity, like very ridiculous temperatures. And it still was my worst ride, and it's kind of sad thinking back. But oftentimes those experiences are worth far more. Like, I didn't make any money or anything in Kona, but it didn't matter, because it was worth far more than any money that I could have made, because this year, basically, those experiences set me up to have a very good year this year.
Well, let's get into the 3 disciplines then. Your swim, as you said, is probably your weakness, and goodness knows what happens if you make front pack, when you make front pack in the future races. But you've done some work with Jerry Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
When he first saw you, what's the primary issue? Is it stroke? Is it buoyancy? Is it strength?
Actually, he was actually surprised that my stroke wasn't that bad. Like, he was surprised about that. He figured it would be, technically poor. And my body position and stuff actually isn't that bad, especially for someone who's a little more beefy on the leg side of things. Generally, you're going to have, and with the, I've been running for 18, almost 20 years, and your ankles are fused basically at a 90-degree angle. And so that actually wasn't too big of a problem. I did have a few crucial, I think, issues that he saw. He calls it alignment. I was sort of out of alignment. I was pulling really, really wide. I was breaking my wrist. And a lot of great swimmers break their wrists, like Ian Thorpe, like great guys would break their wrists. The difference between them and me is they would correct it very quickly and get the elbow up and at least be pulling, with this perpendicular to the bottom of the pool. Whereas me, this is what I feel. This is the pressure, and I never corrected it. And so I will just keep that elbow dropped and here's all of my force. It's very small application of force. That was a piece of it from a technical standpoint. And then stroke rate, very low stroke rate. And so I was actually swimming pretty well. And this is the thing I never understood is, like, I'm swimming better. Like, I follow a lot of the guys who I race with, and there's guys coming out 2-3 minutes ahead of me in the Ironman swim who I'm swimming better than them in the pool, significantly better, a minute better over 1,500 meters. And yet, in the open water, they're putting 3 minutes into me. And his sort of analysis of that was stroke rate. Like, you're just, in the open water, high stroke rate is king. And I was stroking, no problem, 60 strokes a minute, which is very slow. Like, swimming is, at least from his standpoint, and I'm starting to agree, is very similar to biking. Like, you don't see people riding at 60 RPMs. 75 is like, that's very low RPM. And I was a grinder, very high grinder for a long time at, I would do an Ironman bike at 75 RPMs. But swimming, I think, works very similarly. Like, real high-end swimming, very rare do you see guys at 60. Maybe Sun Yang, you can make the argument. But first of all, actually, from his standpoint, you earn the right to swim like that, to swim a catch-up stroke, to swim a low stroke rate. Because for someone like me, to swim that low puts so many dead spots into the stroke. And you're decelerating, you're basically coming to a stop. So the moment you have any movement in the water, which in an ocean swim, you're going to have movement all the time, everywhere, basically coming to a standstill. And so how do you combat that? Well, you can increase the stroke rate, and it actually, instead of doing things like trying to eliminate dead spots and stuff, it just eliminates dead spots for you. There's no way you can stroke at 80 strokes a minute and have a very long dead spot anyway.
Yeah, totally.
So from a stimming standpoint, those are sort of the big things.
And so you're working on increasing that stroke rate in the pool?
Definitely, but without not really allowing myself to take more strokes. That's a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, right.
But once again, distance per stroke is one of those ideas that's been sort of, probably taken too far in that you need that beautiful long stroke, and that certainly is not the case when you watch. I mean, I've watched enough videos now to see examples of the guy who just won the Olympic gold medal in the 1,500 meters. He's taking over 100 strokes a minute, taking almost 50 strokes to get across a long course pool. That is not textbook good swimming, yet he's Olympic gold medalist 14:30 or whatever for 1,500 meters. It certainly isn't for everyone, 100-plus strokes a minute, but I would say to get into those high-end swimming sides of things, I mean, you're certainly swimming over 80 strokes a minute. There's just no, and for me, that's still very, very quite challenging. Today is actually the best workout I did. I did 12 by 100. I was holding 78 strokes a minute in the long course pool, and I was coming in 120s. So,
Nice.
So other than just like your technical changes in the pool, have you changed the amount of volume that you're swimming now?
I did it here and there. I mean, it's one of those things as I find actually, and just over time, I've come to find going into a race, swimming is very similar to the other ones. I do like to reduce the volume quite a bit because I think there's a time and a place to do sort of a swim focus and to up the mileage, and I did do that this year. I think I had a couple weeks where I was close to 40 kilometers a week, but now coming into the race, I've definitely tapered it off. And whereas interestingly, in the run side of things, I prefer to go into a race with quite a bit of running in my legs. Just over the years, I've come to find that I run well when I have 50K. That's what I'll have going into this race. I'll already have 50K in the 6 days leading into the race. The swimming, interestingly, I usually have my best swims after a day off swimming. So that's got to tell you something, right?
A little bit fresher.
Fresher, and I think, I think swimming is the most susceptible to fatigue. So I try not to put too much fatigue. I've only been swimming 2K a day this week leading into the race. But I'm doing my best swimming.
It's one of the things, you swim harder and you go slower, don't you?
100%.
So
yeah,
you've got to be feeling comfortable in the water.
Yeah, it's very that neuromuscular connection and everything is very. I think for a weaker swimmer anyway, there's a very fine line that you don't want to cross. So I'd say for me anyway, it's better to go in sort of under, more rested going into the swim than overtrained.
Yeah, totally.
Now, and finally on the swim, going into a big race like the World Championships, what's going in Lionel's head as you're walking into the water when you know your arsenal is in T1 waiting for you, and also in T2, but the state of play is at the moment you're almost resigned to the fact that you're not going to be in the front pack. How do you center yourself emotionally?
I mean that is interesting. One of the big things that Jared changed in me is I dreaded the swim, right? And you can see all the people who dread the swim, like they're literally, you can see it on their face, right? And that's just not the right attitude. In fact, it's like, this is like the sort of esoteric side of things, but it weighs you down in the water too, that attitude. And so, I mean, I've tried to, even getting rid of the words like I'm a bad swimmer and stuff. I mean, I'm a developing swimmer. I'm not a bad swimmer. Like when I go to the pool, even today, for instance, there's a lot of great swimmers in there. I'm still doing some of the best swimming in the pool. And we don't have whoever, Josh Hamburger or someone in the pool that day, but it's always a continuum, and you're somewhere on it. So, what was the question again?
So going into the race in the morning.
My mindset. It's more or less swim to the best of your ability and minimize the losses. So for my mantra for the longest time in the water has been give them nothing. And so I give them nothing. I don't take a single stroke where I'm not pushing that water back as hard as I possibly can. That being said, it's taken me a long time to sort of tease apart the pain of swimming, which usually, if it's very painful, it means I'm swimming poorly. I'm in like some hypoxic state. And swimming good and powerfully, it's actually not that painful swimming. I feel relative, yes, when you're in that right zone. So my mantra is give them nothing.
All right, we'll get on the bike now.
You do a lot of your training indoors, right? As a comp trainer?
Yeah, I'm back and forth. I think you need to change things. That's one thing I've been super polarized in life in general, and I'm starting to learn my traits. And so, at one point I was like, no, all the training needs to be done indoors all the time. And from a death by car perspective, that probably is the case.
You've been hit a few times, haven't you?
4 times, yeah. These are false front teeth.
Yeah.
I woke up strapped to the board one time.
Do they come out?
No, they don't. They did pop out one time, actually. I was like crunching down and it popped out of my mouth one time. But
must have been a hard session.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're grunting.
No, it wasn't that particular session, but so from that standpoint, I'm like probably like 80% indoors, 20% outdoors.
And
now,
is
I
that
would say.
only on that little 2.5K circuit that you do?
Usually, yeah. I won't ride on the road, other than like I'm forced to here, and even here, it's like once you've been hit good, you'll change you forever. And so every time a car comes by, just have that little flinch because I can still hear the noise. It was a snow plow actually.
No way.
Yeah, and I can still hear the noise when it hit me, even though I was knocked out and had like amnesia and stuff for 20 minutes or so. So I still am afraid of the road.
I recently just got hit, so I know the exact feeling.
Yeah, it's terrible, and it just whatever. We don't have to go into the the outdoor riding thing, but I don't want to die riding a bike.
Would you rather ride on, if like take the cars away, would you rather do your training on the road or outdoors to get more power out of your legs?
There's a time and a place for everything. I think the CompuTrainer, it teaches you certain way of riding, and it's good, and it makes you very powerful, I think, from one standpoint. But then when you go outside, you also learn to use the bike, too, to generate even more power, more torque. And you learn as you fatigue. I mean, there's two different ways. Like there's on the CompuTrainer, you more use your body to generate force, and on the bike outdoors, you use the bike to generate the force, and your body should stay more centered. And those are just two things in your arsenal, two ways of recruiting muscles and stuff, and I think it's all good. Plus outdoors, very rarely can you find a 30-minute straight TT, no undulation, perfect cadence, the control, everything. I would still, even if I had my own compound with 20-kilometer road, no cars, I would still do training, quite a bit of training indoors. Well, I'd probably do it outdoors in the sun on a stationary trainer.
And you're really well known, Lionel, for releasing your power post races, which Damo and I love.
Yeah.
Your FTP must be incredibly strong. The 10 minutes and half an hour best times or best power for the races have been really impressive. Do you see yourself? How much more work are you doing to improve your best hour in training, or are you more focused on getting that sort of intensity factor up, the IF up for a race, knowing that at some point I can't get much. My gains are much more minimal over the hour.
In all honesty, I feel like I'm still like all this last 2 months I had workouts where I was like brand new. I did 2 by 20 minutes, 100% over 100% of FTP, like workouts that. Well, for instance, I did 10 times 5 minutes. They were all 435 plus watts, which would lead you to believe you can do 50 minutes with 3 minutes recovery, 5 minutes, 3 minutes recovery in between each, that you can push a lot more than 400 watts then for a continuous if you train for it. So I'm still trying to push the 1 hour power up. Yeah, 100%. Very little of this trying to push the intensity factor. Not really doing it at all. If anything, I would say as the season has got on, I've rode at lower and lower intensity factors just because I'm getting the FTP higher and higher. And I think actually I've been running better, at least the last race, which I did do a lot of really good training leading into that race on the bike, all these workouts I'm talking about. And I think that really led to being able to run very well.
So you must be holding the same, if your FTP is increasing, then, or relatively increasing, you must be holding similar power.
I've been keeping the same power. Every race that I've done this year, other than Panama, I held 333 watts in Panama, which was my lowest power of the year. Every single other race, Oceanside, I was 351. The next week, and in Texas, I was 349. St. George, I think I was 352. Mont-Tremblant was that race where I didn't have very good power in my legs. I held 345. Wiesbaden was very technical descents, so I lost a ton of power on those descents because I was on the brakes and cowering in fear of death, and I held 341. So I've been pretty within 20 watts every single race.
But if your IF is reducing, then obviously you'd be feeling
you should be running better, yes. And I would say I probably have been, yeah. Like Mont-Tremblant was my worst run of the year. It was 115, and well, that one was very hot. It was. I'm not. Unfortunately, I don't think I was probably not built to do great in very hot environments. So. For me to do well, you know what I mean, I'm going to have to get that intensity factor, or rather the FTP way up, so that the run and the intensity factor on the bike is really low, so I'm not sweating as much and all this stuff. in hot environments.
Now, a question that I'm really looking forward to hearing the answer to. 2015, Jan Frodeno's power file in Hawaii, 277 normalised for I think a second best split of 426. How do you feel about that file? And how do you feel about...
I mean, the one thing about the files, everyone's using a different power meter, and there's going to be, let's say, 2-3% disagreement between power meters. So, 2%, what's 1% of 272? So it's going to be at least 6-7 watts, plus or minus. So let's give it the upper limit, say it was 285, something like that. I mean, I wore Camelback in that race. I had 4 round bottles on the bike full of liquids. I'm not the lightest guy. It's a net uphill for the first 100K, and I only held probably 15 watts more than that. I was 8 minutes slower, mind you, but I gave a lot of penalties too. I was in a very bad position, etc. Whereas, contrast that with him, he's done literally every possible aerodynamic thing you could possibly do is there and been done. So, man, it's actually quite inspiring from that standpoint, in that it is possible to get that kind of speed when you are completely optimized. And so he was the one who inspired me to go into the velodrome actually over the winter time. And I think I got my CDA down like 0.3 or whatever from what it was in Kona. And I mean, this year I've rode significantly better because of it, I think.
And so just the velodrome work in terms of aerodynamics to reduce the drag?
And then just from a positional standpoint, yeah, well, I had a very good bike fitter fit me and really think about, because I don't have the best sort of flexibility and like coming out wide with my knees and stuff. So I had a good guy, get me in a good bike fit for my body. I was really uncomfortable too. Like, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't hold my position for so long. And in the end, I found I was just bad bike fit. I was just in a bad fit because now I don't want to get out of the time trial position, right? And that means you're in a good fit. And so yeah, from that standpoint, that's what I've done. And then just, things like the bottles and stuff, getting rid of the round bottles, thinking a little bit more. I will never wear a Camelback, for instance, ever again. I was a little too anal about staying really well hydrated. And I think you can accomplish that because there's an aid station in Kona every 10 miles. You can take a bottle that's 10 bottles.
When you hit them with the tailwind, you're going past them aid stations pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, that's a piece of it, of course, but there's a trade-off. I think that's that's where my personality comes into it, being very polarized. And I wanted to, no, I'm going to stay fully hydrated right to the finish. And the reality is you have a bit of play in that regard. And so anyways, yeah, like from a nutritional, how to get it in, I've definitely corrected those things. A frame aero bottle. In velodrome, I found those rear bottles really have no penalty whatsoever. So there's no point in not running a rear bottle on my bike because I put my flat kit in it. If you don't get the trash out before the end of the thing, you can always put it in the back. Just those kinds of lessons.
And apart from that, for last year in Hawaii, on the bike, did you any other lessons learnt, or is it just the training and just the aerodynamics that have changed?
From the biking standpoint, one of the big things is that the course is quite easy from a handling standpoint. So for me, it really suits me from that standpoint. So I think I can do well in that race as time goes on and as I learn more. I would say the biggest thing I learned in that entire race, and it's the same. The sun is the same here. Is like the sun. I was doing all my training indoors, and like for 8 straight months. And literally, even the sun where I'm at isn't very intense. The sun is so much more intense here. If you don't train outside, there's something that changes in you, some acclimation of some sort. And that sun, it was just, I was there 25 days in advance of the race. And it wasn't until 2 days before the race that my heart rate finally was starting to come down. I literally had to, I haven't had to walk in a run in years, you know what I mean? And I was in a couple training runs. I had to walk. There was no more. And then I thought you're just in a furnace, you know what I mean? You don't cool down. And so you start running again, and you have to walk again. It was such
less than ideal.
It was an amazing to see the power of the environment, and that's sort of the big difference between the 70.3 and the Ironman. I think the environment is just so short. The environment doesn't play nearly as much of a role on you. And that's why, I mean, I think I can do better in the 70.3, not having that much experience, you know what I mean? And as time goes on, I'll do better at the Ironman.
So do you think,
huge base because of the environment. You just need to learn about it.
do you think to move in the final prep to a place that has a similar environment without being...
I mean, I one thing I'm going to try when I get back is I've got these heat lamps that I'm putting up over my treadmill and my CompuTrainer, and I mean, it's the same as the sun. It's heating you like your surface of your skin. It's infrared heat. So probably it's gonna be a combination. Like as I really start to focus on the Kona race in the next few years, it'd probably be a combination of the two. But that's the thing, though. You don't want to go to an environment. Well, I guess you can always train indoors, but you want to do all your quality stuff in optimal conditions, and then do like your easier, longer stuff out there where you get the acclimation, because you don't want to sacrifice speed for heat training, because being in better shape is going to allow you to perform better in the heat. But then you also need to get the acclimation to the heat, so you don't want to sacrifice those workouts. So if you live, like you always hear this problem with guys in Texas and stuff like that, like you just can't go fast. You can't be running your absolute best. You can get the heart rates of it, but there's just not that muscular change that's happening when you're running. You're truly running as fast as you can. I think you can approach it, heat training, very similar to altitude training, sort of that live high, train low, live in the heat, train in the cool, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Now onto the run. You said you got the treadmill at home and you got some pretty big miles in each week. Are you hitting that treadmill because of longevity reasons in terms of getting your body through those miles, or is it something that's, again, just a controlled environment that you can do whatever you'd like?
It's a combination of all of those things, definitely. Like originally I got onto the treadmill because I used to run through Canadian winters. I used to be one of those people who was like, oh, you're a wimp if you go indoors. Treadmills are for wimps and stuff. And until I bowed my knee running down a patch of ice, and I bowed my knee inwards, and I got a bursal sac inflammation that lasted for 6 months, and it was very painful. And that's when I started to run on the treadmill. But when I started to run on it, I started to see, like, getting off from a 30K run or something, my legs weren't nearly as, like, I mean, I'd be like borderline crippled after a 30K run on the concrete, right? And so I was getting off and feeling a lot fresher. Not having a training partner around, it was helping me. I could set it to whatever, 11.2 miles an hour and do 2K repeats, and just was great if you didn't have a training partner. And then that's when I started to say, this is actually a really good training tool, very similar to the CompuTrainer. And so once I got over sort of that, well, the big thing that needed to be tested was, is it the same? Can you produce the same running? Because I was doing some very good running from running outside then, when I was still running all outside. And so I needed to sort of test the hypothesis of, if I convert, a great deal of my running over to the treadmill, will I still run well outside? Is it the same? You always hear that argument, like, oh, the treadmill does the work for you or whatever. And so I did. I did a massive amount of running, I think about 3 straight months on the treadmill, and then I went and did a 30K race. Well, the only time I ran outside was the week leading into the race. And it was weird to get outside. Like, the ground felt like it was moving so slow, because that's another beauty of the treadmill. I feel like at least you feel like you're moving your legs faster, yeah. But anyways, I ended up running 1:36 for the 30K, which is like 3 32-minute 10Ks in a row. So, and that was the best run I'd ever done up to that point, and it was pretty much exclusive treadmill training. So then I was hooked. And then I went super polarized again for like a year and a half straight. And this is where you start to find you have to test more hypotheses. And I think I still had a lot of adaptations from doing hill running and stuff in my legs just from that prior to the 3 months, right? So I still ran well. But I think as time went on, I didn't run as well, because there's a lot of, there is the damage, you do to the little accessory muscles and stuff when you're running on the pavement, when you're going around corners and stuff like that. And I lost a lot of those adaptations. So I think I actually didn't run great in 2015. And I feel like I've started to do more like an 80-20, same as on the bike and the run, treadmill, outdoor running. And that has allowed me to strengthen those accessory muscles again. And now I feel like I'm starting to get back. And in 2014, I did a lot of good running, like I said.
Just to use the road to sort of complement what you're actually doing on indoors to get
definitely
best of both worlds, without the impacts of what you don't like about outdoors.
Totally. I think you should get maybe one outdoor workout in a week, and one, moderately long run outdoors a week, something like that. That's like a good ratio and then the rest indoors from my standpoint. That allows me to run 150 kilometers and still feel pretty good not crippled anyway. If I tried doing that, with 15 hours of biking and 20K of swimming, I'd be pretty crippled, I'd say, if I was doing that all on the concrete after a week or two of it.
Do you go through treadmill mode as much?
I did originally. I went through 3 of them in like maybe a 6-month period. And then I finally invested the money and I got, it's called a Boston Marathon treadmill by Proform. And it goes 15 miles an hour, 20% incline, 6% decline, all the good stuff. And knock on wood, but I'm at 3,000 miles. Average pace probably close to 10 miles an hour anyway of those 3,000. And it's still holding up well.
The electrician got to know you pretty well.
Yeah, his name is Mr. Treadmill, actually, our local guy, and he loves the thing. He's never seen a treadmill like this one that I have now, so he thought it was super cool. One thing though, if anyone's tuning in who does go through the treadmills a lot, I find using like an old shower curtain over top of the electronics really preserves the life of the electronics. That's the thing I think that's really going now for whatever reason, like cell phones and stuff, they're built pretty cheaply, the electronics. So my electronics are staying pretty good now too, now that I've been doing that.
The shower curtain for the sweat.
That's right. If you're a heavy sweater, I'm a pretty heavy sweater. So.
Now, as you said, 70-minute half off a very, very honest ride. How quick would you like to see yourself go in an Ironman? And maybe even in Kona?
I mean, unfortunately with Kona, that race is always going to be challenging for me. It's better to just acknowledge your weaknesses. And I have a very high sweat rate. The engine burns very, very hot. And so, and until I can come out front pack and just sit into that bike pack and not have to work hard, I'm going to be sweating a ridiculous amount. So Kona, I'm never going to have like a fantastic run, I don't think. Unfortunately, my race plan likely is going to have to be catch them on the bike and hopefully hang on for dear life on the run. In temperate conditions, on the other hand, 235, I'm going to run a 235 in my lifetime. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, now we're looking to Hawaii this year. I presume, is this weekend the goal for the back half of the year, and Kona's
for certain. I had to make that decision if I was going to come this far and not do an Ironman leading in. I haven't done an Ironman in this calendar year. Not that I think that's a bad thing. I think it might actually work to my advantage in the end. I had to make the choice. Am I focusing 100% on the 70.3? Or am I focusing on the Kona? And so I'm focused 100% on this race. So yeah, this has been the focus. That being said, I think actually in the end it probably will help my Kona performance, because it certainly got rid of all that race pace, long 4 or 5 hour bike rides and stuff that I was doing in 2015. It didn't work out very well for me anyway for 2015 Kona. So I will be coming in with a lot more speed in my legs and a lot of freshness. And I think that's one thing that I learned in Kona was that heat. If you have any fatigue in you, that heat at 30K into that run, we're going to find out who's been overtraining and who's not been overtraining. And, I found out that I'd been overtraining really bad. I felt like I was... Oh, yes, very much.
What are you going to do between post 70.3 Worlds till Kona? Obviously, that's going to be your first Ironman of the year. Are you going to change your training at all? Or are you going to keep it very similar to what you've been doing for the whole year?
I don't think you should change a good thing. So, I'll probably do 2 4-hour rides. And then I'll probably run 15K off each one of those. Not at pace, run off of it, but I'll do those bike rides at a decent intensity, 270, something like that. And that it really is insecurity why I'd be doing that, just because do I got the legs to go 4 or 5, 4.5 hours? And I'm pretty confident I do, but I still want to prove it to myself. But other than that, no, I'm going to do the exact same thing. The only thing that I've sort of removed now is those VO2 max intervals. I'd say the FTP is pretty set in stone from now until then. So now I'll be doing more that high-end threshold stuff. So 30-minuters, 370 watts. If I can do 4 of those in a row before Kona, I think that'll be a good workout, a good target workout. And same on the run. I did 9 by 2K leading into this race. I did 9 by 2K, 320 per kilometer average. So it's a bucket list workout. I want to get that one. I don't know. You have to have fun too sometimes. So I want to do 10 by 2K. I've never done it before, so I'd like to do it once.
Yep, totally.
So that's it from that training standpoint. And then the water. I got to get the mileage up. Leading into this race, I've not been doing those 4 or 5K swims, and that is a tough swim. That's a swim where I do think you do need to do the full volume 4K quite often to make that swim. As a weaker swimmer, make that less taxing, that water. I don't want to come out of the water having the swim distance itself having been taxed me. And I've been doing a lot of 2-3K sets, so I will need to get that up a bit.
And especially that swim over there, obviously being a non-wetsuit swim, you seem to come out of the water just feeling that little bit more fatigue than you would anywhere else.
Definitely.
Like getting on the bike, it's hard to get your legs straight away.
It's much different. Yeah, I would agree with you. From the salt water, all of that stuff, it's just, and that's hard to prepare for if you don't live in those types of conditions. So, I'd say your best way to prepare for that is to swim 5-6K sets, a couple of them a week, to just do some over swimming type stuff. Swimming is the one I think you can and you should, as long as you're swimming with good form. You start to deteriorate, get out of the water, there's no point in swimming anymore. But if you can hold the good touches, if they're good touches, more touches are good touches. So
we're 5 weeks from Saturday to Hawaii. What's the agenda? A week of rest post this weekend and travel home. Then maybe 2 weeks?
I'm going to do 2 more training blocks, 2 more 8-day blocks. Yeah. So, and I'll play that by year. 3 weeks out from a race, you're not really going to improve much. So I'm pretty much in the shape that I'll be going to Kona now. It's just confidence boost, and you just don't want to get over fatigued in that time. So it's just that game of not disassembling the machinery due to being lazy, and also not putting in any more fatigue. So 2 8-day blocks with probably 3-4 days of recovery in between the 8 days, and then taper into it, 7-8 day taper.
And how long before you fly into?
I go 1 week this year. That was one big thing I learned as well, being there for 25 days. It was like, I was like the most chill person you ever met. Like I was just like, yeah, dude, rock on, don't care about whatever, 15th,
what's this weekend?
20th, 30th, 40th, 50th place, don't matter to me, brah. But that's just not, if you want to win that race, you need to be fired up. You need to be angry. Like I would say it'd be better to go somewhere with like really aggressive drivers, like that hate bikers and stuff, and go ride your bike around there.
You're here now.
And well, it seems all right here. I don't know, man. Where I'm coming from, it's a little, they're a little more aggressive. But you need to be angry, I think, to do well. Yeah, you need to be there for a reason. Otherwise, you will crumble in that heat.
Well, on behalf of Global Sports Coach, we wish you all the best for this weekend.
Well, thanks.
And we're big fans, and hopefully we can see a solid result in Hawaii and build on in 2017.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Thanks very much, Lionel.
Yeah, no problem.
Cheers.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, good luck to you too, racing.
Yeah. Richie's racing too.
Good luck.
I'm just a late register.
All right, me too. I do it last minute. Everything's last minute.
Oh, are you racing this weekend?
No, no, I'm not.